in society there are a lot of concepts and expectations and stuff like that. And for me, once I got to the point where I knew what I want and where I knew what made me happy, that was it.
I first came out as gay to my family and friends when I was 13, and I can still remember staying up the night before, just going over all the details of how I was going to approach my parents, because I wanted to be as articulate and intelligent as a 13-year-old can possibly be, just so that they would understand how much it meant to me.
Middle school, 13, it was just confusing, too much. I kind of instantaneously compartmentalized it, now not dealing with it. So sure enough, college, a much more conducive environment for that kind of experimentation and risk-taking, I came to terms with it.
It wasn't necessarily like a realization for me. It was something that I think in the back of my mind, subconsciously, I always knew. Like, I had crushes on like female teachers when I was younger. And once I got to college, I started to kind of come into my own being, I guess, more or less you could say. And that experience was just amazing.
I did not come out officially to lots of people until I was 18. It was the summer after I turned 18, so it was the summer right after I graduated high school. I had never dated anyone before that, male or female, and I had admitted to myself that I was gay, but not to anyone else really. So I build up the courage and I say, "Mom, I have something to tell you." And she goes, "Oh yes, what?" And I said, "Well, Sassy and I, parentheses, yes, my first girlfriend's name was Sassy, are not just friends, we've been dating." And my mother goes, "Oh honey, I know."
The moment I realized that I was gay was in 7th grade when I first saw my history teacher and fell in love for the first time. And telling my sister was a very big challenge. She eventually, after a couple of years, began to accept who I am.
And then one day my mom comes to me, I was sitting at the computer, she walks to the kitchen and says, "William, I need to talk to you about something." She starts with like things about my childhood and my upbringing and our life. The light bulb lit up and I realized like, oh, she's talking about that.
Luckily, both my family and friends were incredibly understanding and accepting, which made me feel happy and like I had somewhere that I belonged. And I think that it was their unconditional love and support that really allowed me to get to know myself and eventually come to terms with my own gender identity. And so I came out again, but this time as transgender.
My father was like my biggest support system, so once I got to the point where I wasn't worried about anyone else's opinions and anyone else's judgment, I knew that that support system was enough to carry me through.
I wasn't ready for my family to find out. I kept it from them, but they found out in a kind of abrupt, out of control way. And it was very hard for my mom especially. It was hard for me because I didn't really have any role models. I didn't know what gay could look like.
I think that my biggest fear in coming out was the possibility of losing those that I loved. And this is a common fear amongst the LGBT youth. Up until that point, I was the only trans person my family and friends had ever met. And although they loved and accepted me, I have to admit that there was definitely a bit of a learning curve.
My advice is for people struggling with coming to terms with their sexuality / gender identity, is to not worry about labeling it so hard. There's a lot of pressure when you're younger to slap a label on yourself real quick.
There are so many times where I felt like really alone in my coming out process and identifying who I was, and it really doesn't need to be like that at all, and I know that now. My advice to anyone like that would to be find people who are similar, who have similar likes and interests as you, because that's where you find your comfort zone and that's where you can really flourish into your own being.
I think it's super important to make sure that you surround yourself with good friends. If
it takes you to an uncomfortable or painful place, sort of as it did for me for a while, whether it's telling your family, telling the people around you, I would advise to fake it till you make it. Try to cultivate courage almost as if out of thin air, but it's actually within yourself. And you'd be surprised how strong you are. And other people will surprise you too when you stand by yourself, combined with the sheer power of time. My mom, who took it the worst, is the person inviting me and my girlfriend to stay with her in Arizona and treating my girlfriend like another daughter.
I never have to ask anybody for permission to be myself. You're either gonna like it or you're not.
Just know that you are beautiful and there's nothing wrong with you.
So if any of you are struggling with coming out, or perhaps have already come out but you're not getting the love and acceptance that you deserve, I want you to know that it gets better, so much better, and there's an entire community of people in the world who love you and accept you for who you really are.